Welcome to the Powerhouse Podcast. Today I've got a wonderful friend, Simon Andrews, talking today about live shopping. Now, right now, Simon and I are talking about and write about a lot of things like TikTok Live and how brands are taking advantage of that, whether big brands or small brands. But I thought we could maybe even go back a bit because live shopping and live commerce isn't necessarily new. It goes all the way back to QVC, and the Home Shopping Network, which were essentially television versions of live shopping. But does it go back even further, Simon? Like, what is the role that shopping's already had?
I think it does. You know, it's a fascinating topic. Lovely to be here to talk about it. But you think about it, shopping was always an experience. Marks and Spencer started on a market stall in Leeds. Everything was a penny. But there was people there to explain the product, talk about the product, help people choose products, and then buy the product from there. And that evolution from market stalls to department stores where shopping was a huge event was always been about, being helped along the way. And if you think about the heyday of the department stores like Selfridges and Harrods and Whiteley's, it's a real occasion and very rich experience. And the problem is that with e-commerce, we came along, we stripped all the fun out of it, all the information, and just gave people pictures to look at. So I think you can go back a bit further than perhaps QVC.
What and like let's take Marks and Spencer's. Do you mean like if it was like the 70s and I walked in and someone would be demonstrating like, hey, here's like essentially like a live product demo, right? Was that what the definition of live shopping would be back then?
Yeah, I think that's always been there, showing something off from there. And there's a great tradition in sort of markets around the world that someone can turn up with a bag and start doing a demo of how to peel a potato and sell them out of this bag. There's always been theatre around shopping. We sort of lost that along the way. There's an interesting story that I would think is quite pivotal in the whole sort of e-commerce, digital commerce. There's a guy called Barry Diller, who was a sort of wonder kid in Hollywood, was running his Paramount Studios at 31, got fired by Rupert Murdoch and was trying to work out what to do next. And his girlfriend was Diane von Furstenberg, the designer, and she says, I'm flying to Wisconsin tomorrow to do this TV show, why don't you come with me? So they flew out to the middle of nowhere, and the TV station in the middle of the desert with a huge 400-foot, aerial on there. And basically, he sits down with a cup of coffee. She goes into the studio, starts being interviewed about her dresses, and someone local is showing the dresses off. And you notice there's a bank of lights there. And so all these lights light up. So what are all these lights? Oh, they're phone calls. People are ringing in about the show. Okay. And why are some of them coloured? Oh, well, the green one is when someone's bought something. And he sat there, Barry Diller, and saw his girlfriend selling thousands of pounds worth of dresses over the phone live from this TV show, and became a convert to e-commerce ever since. And he runs IAC now, ran things like Match and Tinder and Expedia along the day, but bought QVC in its early days as a way of industrializing what was already going on.
QVC was one of Barry Diller's like big wins to give him credibility in the digital space, right? Because I think that if you think about it, what QVC was, and I think I put Home Shopping Network, which is I think around the same time there, is again like a live demonstration that you would have seen in store, but now you're seeing it on your TV, and someone could call in and be like, "Hey, I'd like to order one of these things right there." And it sounds like analog to us now, but I guess if you were to do the same thing on a TikTok Live today, it's essentially just like a modern variation of that. I think.
Well, I'm close to this because one of my best friends is a presenter on QVC still to this day. So he does the fashion, whatever. Glenn's a very cool guy. It's very amusing because when you go out with him, he's always been stopped by people to say hello and see him on TV and whatever. It's all women of a certain age because he sells sort of like, nice mid-market raincoats or whatever. But he sells thousands of pounds worth of merchandise live. The model still works on TV. And you're right, at some point, that will be brought to life and done on social, and everyone's just trying to work out what is the formula for, how to make that work.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, like, from my perspective, I guess in like my generation, like I think people of my age can associate QVC and Home Shopping Network as kind of like a weird, not necessarily prestige viewing. It's like a weird cheesy thing that you'd buy, like the ShamWow. It's like some innovative like napkin or washing machine or way to clean your house that may not necessarily be the coolest thing to buy, but it's like Tupperware in terms of like how quote unquote sexy it is, but maybe like essential. It never appeared to me as something that was
I
like
think you're
high
exactly
quality
right.
products.
Yeah, they're not products probably, people we, close to would buy. But Glenn, we'll be showing you the 3 ways you can wear this raincoat this season, stuff like that. And that sort of warmth and explanation translates into sales. Yeah, the thing that everyone gets hung up with is the Chinese version of it from there, where you hear these amazing reports that people sell hundreds of millions of dollars in a day. There's a guy called the Lipstick King, I think, holds the record for most
Yeah.
sales in a 24-hour period. And those figures almost feel like it's lost in translation. That can't be right. But, in a Chinese market where unsophisticated shoppers, it's taken off and works incredibly well.
Yeah, as you know, I wrote this article on Chinese live streaming, I think back in 2021, because I was tracking it quite a lot. And people like Li Jiaqi, the Lipstick King, and the variety of platforms people sell on, whether it's like Taobao Live or Xiaohongshu, etc. I
Yeah.
kind of get it because I was in China a few weeks ago for a wedding, and the amount of commerce that is mobile, like you read about it, of course, like, oh, in China people use WeChat Pay or Alipay. But when literally, I think 99.9% of transactions you make are on your mobile phone. Like I paid for my cab using my phone and scanning a QR code. I can't think of a single
Yeah.
thing that I paid for in China, both in rural areas and big areas, that didn't involve my phone. I didn't use my card. I didn't use cash. It kind of makes sense where like if all the attention and the behavior is on a mobile device, then somewhat pair that with the fact that China just has like a billion people, it makes sense that live commerce would be bigger there. And people are trying to imitate that here too.
I think the other thing in China, the logistics work. Quite a lot of
Yeah.
people who sell things like fruit. The guy from northwest China, which is great for pomegranates, sells pomegranates. But you know that will be delivered 2 days later, fresh, good condition. So the whole infrastructure works. And again, what we're looking for is parallels. Okay, would that work in the West? What would you need to change to make it work? Pomegranates probably isn't the best idea. Lipstick maybe is. But we're looking for parallels.
Well, and also if you think about like particularly I think during COVID or immediately post COVID, a lot of startups in the US and UK raised based on the idea that let's take live stream commerce from China and bring it to the US. Like Whatnot might be one of the biggest,
Yeah.
most successful examples. Now a unicorn. I know personally that the CEO of Drip very well, similar concept. There were all these different companies trying to do their own live stream platforms. Fanatics was, I don't know if it came out, but Fanatics Live was created. They actually just acquired a European Whatnot company. I forget what it's called, but it seemed to be enough of the zeitgeist that people were willing to raise on the idea that, look, this trend is coming to the West. We're going to be the live commerce platform for the US, the UK, and people were willing to fund that. Whatnot has done really well, but they've kind of fit into a niche that's much more like collectibles, which the industry know pretty well, where I think the majority of Whatnot's GMV is sports cards, Pokemon cards, sneakers. It's never really translated into more like apparel, fashion, or even the things that might sound like pomegranates that you'd see in China. China seems to be like such a broad range where it's not just like a specific type of product, but you could. I think I saw an article about people sold like cars on a live stream platform in China. It's just like high ticket items to a watermelon seem to be maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that will translate to the West.
I think you're right. There is a lot of niches around. You'll find quite successful businesses doing it in a narrow product category. I always think, you watch Amazon, who the best e-commerce retailer bar none, trying to crack fashion for 20 years. They're trying to do fashion live now. They've got quite a lot of people, if you search around on Amazon.com, who are running their shows for an hour talking about their items. So it's back to the Diane von Furstenberg model. Here's the designer talking about this, and you can click to buy. There's a guy called Ian Rogers who was at Apple, who went to LVMH to help them digitize their business. And he said something really interesting about 10 years ago. When you look at e-commerce, my job is not to make LVMH work in e-commerce, which is all little sort of, a grid of dresses, that you can hardly see. My job's to make, e-commerce ready for LVMH. And I think that's what we're looking for. How do you take e-commerce, which works to a level, and add, the fun, the enjoyment, the event of shopping we talked about, And live shopping promises that. Uniqlo are trying to do it as well. So I think someone will crack it. The event about, at 7 o'clock on Tuesday evening, we're selling, this season's parka. There's something about that's making sense. And we're seeing that with TikTok Shop, that, therefore, the shop's running and you can buy bags of sweets and, soda, etc. But it's when they run a particular set of events, it seems to really work. Appointment shopping almost.
Yeah. Well, one point on that, you and I, we just wrote an article on our latest Good TikTok creative newsletter about Made by Mitchell, the beauty brand, which was started by this influencer creator, makeup artist, Mitchell. And he broke the record for selling 1 million pounds worth of product within 24 hours via TikTok Live. And I think he was selected by TikTok. So of course they wanted that to succeed and probably promoted part of it too. But I remember during COVID working with some companies that were experimenting with live commerce. It is like the same level of production and promotion and planning that something at QVC would take, where if you look at Made by Mitchell's TikTok account, so much content was created just leading up to the event. And you could set reminders. It's like, okay, in the week leading up to this big event, like Tuesday at 5 p.m., he kept posting piece after piece after piece saying, don't forget, and different ways of approaching, reminding people. You could set reminders for that. And then you have the actual event itself, which is, I think, at least partially ephemeral because it's live and it's not necessarily always recorded or rewatched. And then there's the sort of after post-event stuff where you want to keep, building on that momentum. And it reminds me of just a product launch in general, right? That's how a media plan would work if we were launching Febreze, a new Febreze thing. Or I remember I used to work with a lot of car companies. The way that's the same kind of strategy you take if you're launching a new car on October 1st and you want to get promotion before, during, and after.
I think the prime example I always think of is, fashion brands like Supreme, streetwear brands, who have built the idea of a drop into, the core of their market. If you walk past a Supreme store, most days there's nobody in the store, there's not many people there. But on a certain day you go there and be 400 or 500 people queuing down the street because they're doing a drop that day. And if you want to buy a new Supreme t-shirt, you have to be there to, because it'll be sold out in 3 hours' time. So adding that sort of excitement, I think, is, a core part of it. I think Made by Mitchell did that. It kept telling people, reminding them to make sure they were there on the time, otherwise you miss out. And I think that element of fear of missing out is quite powerful.
I think it's something that anyone can really try, right? Whether you're a big brand or a small brand, the execution is really important where, in a way, it's not the exact same thing, but that drop model has been used by a lot of fashion brands right now. Even Nike with the sneakers app, that's essentially a big part of the hype. Obviously, there's limited supply there as part of the equation, but the Nike sneakers app and Adidas Confirmed, they're kind of not appointment viewing, but they are ways to drop product at a specific time, specific date that it's limited supply, and that's part of the marketing itself. And then also, if you look at looking at the convergence of retail and media, Network is a live commerce company that is very kind of glossy and high end, and they're about streetwear and collectibles, not cheap stuff. And they just acquired Complex, and now Network and Complex is as an entity where you have retail, live commerce retail, and now they have their own media arm. Complex are the ones behind Hot Ones and Pigeons and Planes, etc. So it's the tactics and strategies are getting more sophisticated, and that the growth and behavior should just increase.
It's interesting. What do you think about, Instagram and Facebook all tried with live and with shopping and sort of walked away from that a couple of years ago? And, the mechanism's still there, same with YouTube. But it's TikTok they're making the running. They seem very preoccupied or very focused on the TikTok shop. And when you talk to their people, TikTok shop comes up pretty quickly in conversation, doesn't it?
It does. And I think about when I was at Facebook, there was a push for video and live video, but it was always treated as sort of not necessarily a conversion objective. A live video is something you do to just tell your brand story without necessarily driving action. Maybe that's because just the sort of technology wasn't as good in 2015, which is the time period I'm referencing. I think about IG Live right now. I actually don't even know if there's functionality to buy on there, but IG Live is a fairly popular thing. And I know people like Drewski, big influencers that have built a lot of their career on that. I just wonder if it's the sort of back end fulfillment is what TikTok is innovated on. Because if you actually buy something on on TikTok Shop, which I have both off live streams and just ads that I've seen, the interface is very much like pretty intuitive and it's all in app. You don't really need to click out too much. And I think there's like a high quality product design there. Maybe I just have a personal bias or just haven't tried it out, but I can't tell you what the Instagram shopping experience is. I know it's big. There's a lot of people using it, but it just seems maybe less immersive to me. Maybe it's my demographic, maybe it's what I'm interested in. But the live stuff seems, maybe it's also the connection that TikTok has to China, right? The Douyin app and all the Chinese live streaming features.
I think if you think about, you think about, commerce in general, the big thing we've seen in the past sort of, 2 years is Wish, then Temu and Shine, where a different way of buying has turned up from China, been very successful, very cheap prices, huge range. And there's something about that, I would call it chaotic, but, there's sort of like very busy way of doing things, which is, working well on TikTok. And I think they get that, whereas I think IG and Facebook don't in the same way. So, I wonder whether we can expect to see Temu and Shine sort of doing live shopping as well as part of their offer. Something to watch, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think live is essentially maybe a very involved version of gamification, right? And Shein, Temu, etc., they're already heavily gamified, so it makes sense to just like extend beyond that. I also wonder like the role of live streaming influencers, right? Influencers and content creators. If you were following someone like Kai Cenat right now or iShowSpeed, these are young guys that built their career mainly through live streaming. They didn't make it via long YouTube videos like Mr. Beast or maybe cute, quick, long, short form content like TikTok. They kind of started on Twitch primarily. And, Twitch separately is kind of considered maybe one of the less profitable, commercially viable elements of, let's say, Amazon's broader ad offering. But there's such high engagement with like Twitch streamers, right? Like gaming's obviously a big element there, but Kai Cenat, I know, has like in the middle of striking some very big deals. I mean, he was the first streamer to get a Nike deal. And I think it was teased out, I don't know if it was confirmed, but he's got a deal with McDonald's. There's like a rumor that's happening and some other big FMCG brands. iShowSpeed is a pretty controversial streamer as well, but these people are like cultural icons for the youth, right? Kai Cenat, but they're not brand safe. Like Kai Cenat nearly started and you could argue whether or not this was his fault or someone else, that like riot in Union Square when he like did this like shock drop there. Union Square was packed in New York.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
That's him. So clearly big brands willing to take a risk on that. But, Kai Cenat does like hours on hours of continuous streams with big people like Kevin Hart. I just wonder, if you're a brand, how do you think about working with those people? Because they kind of are maybe more of a punch in the face than working with a more traditional influencer that's more brand safe, working with a smooth George Clooney to sell you an espresso. But young people love Kai Cenat and they want to watch him and they find him so engaging as they do with iShowSpeed. And are these people going to be the lipstick king of the US? Because that live content has some intersection with live commerce, but I don't know if those people like Kai Cenat are going to be the same as the Chinese live hosts who are just selling product like over and over again.
Well, I think there's two things in there, Anthony. One is I think that if you're an influencer, you're looking to get paid by the platform, and the way you do that has sort of changed. It used to be the brand would come to you direct, then you go through the TikTok creator program and get paid for the brand, then you get rewarded for the length of your views. Having a sort of taking a commission on selling something seems like a natural, extension of that. So we'll see it more and more places. The brands, when we've talked to brands, everyone's interested in this because it's a new way of selling, and in the same way that if a new supermarket shows up, big brands want to be stocked in there. But that interest is tempered by this, fear of influencers, which most big brands have. Is they all know someone who's been burnt because they use an influencer who turned out to be not a very nice person or with some sort of bad behavior in the past, and they got burnt by it. So they're trying to work out, well, how do you actually take advantage of the phenomenon, which is clearly there and growing, without putting yourself at risk. So it's interesting that brave brands like Nike, McDonald's, which tend to pioneer marketing, are looking at this sort of thing. The more conservative brands are all watching. Like, if Nike can get away with it, maybe we'll try it. But we're going to wait and see if Nike gets punched in the face before we commit our own money.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a hard decision to make because as you're talking, I was thinking to myself, if I was CMO of a big brand that wanted to work with like a live streamer, I'd be thinking there's definitely benefits to that, but how do you mitigate against risk? I mean, my personal opinion sometimes is that, brand safety, and it's easy for me to say if I'm not like a brand manager of a brand that has decades of history and I've got a lot at stake, my job, if something goes wrong. But do you think people are adequately taking enough risk if you're on the brand side? Are people overly cautious?
I think, you and I know that the last 20 years of digital innovation, those who've been quick and early have been rewarded. It might not be a smooth road, but they've been rewarded by doing that. Those who come to it later, reap benefits later and smaller benefits. So I think that, you could be braver. I think that people want somebody else to take the risk. It's the same with Google search. Let somebody else take the risk. With Amazon shopping, let someone else take the risk. I think it's normalized and people will follow from there. So I think what we said when we're talking to brands is find a way of getting involved in this that protects yourself, that minimizes the risk, but you learn from it and go step by step rather than just sit back and watch. Because by the time it's all safe and whatever, your competitor has taken market share and has got an advantage over you.
Well, and this is where these examples like made by Mitchell come in handy, right? Or is it Stormy Steel in the US? Like people that have maybe less to lose. I mean, they're still, viable businesses, but I think if a L'Oreal sees that a made by Mitchell beauty makeup product succeeded on TikTok Live, then that's maybe enough of a case study to give them confidence, whether it's L'Oreal or any other kind of beauty brand, to say, okay, let's try this out. And then they got to figure out who to work with. Do they do it themselves? Do they
I agree.
find an influencer?
Zeros after pound or dollar signs, is always convincing. £1 million in a day, that shows on the sort of sales graph for L'Oreal or Estee Lauder or whatever. It's enough to move the needle. So I think people will pay more attention and trying to work out what we can do. I think as we run into Christmas with Black Friday, seeing what TikTok do around that will be really interesting. They've obviously, got plans for events around all that. And maybe we'll see some bigger brands participate rather than just this, the sort of e-com business we've talked about here.
I'm very bullish on live shopping. I think it will just continue to increase. So this time next year, Simon, what do you think progress will have been made in terms of the industry?
Well, it's interesting if you think about the bigger retail media. So the idea of actually advertising on Tesco has taken off. With Amazon as a major player. TikTok Shop is part of that same sort of arc. I think it's inevitable that you will actually bring shopping closer to creators and closer to social. It's a case of how fast it moves and where the momentum is with the big brands or the small brands. But it's going to happen. Watch this space.
That's actually a really good point. I feel like these retail media networks or offerings, why wouldn't they go live, right? Like Tesco's retail media network and offering right now shouldn't just like trend towards being more and more immersive. And then maybe it makes more sense for Tesco Live to succeed more than Amazon Live or Instagram Live from a commerce perspective.
Well, I think Amazon sort of sits there as a one to watch because it's got the reach, so it's a platform in its own right. Huge advertising play, but basically it's a retailer at heart. So they could actually work out that, hey, this is a guy who watched the Gillette ad in the football, and we've now invited him to a live stream where the guy's talking about the razor's probably not great. I know, but talking about that, they can weave those things together. So I think there's big money here, and I think that you will see some big ideas come out of it.
For sure, I'm sure we'll see some very, very soon. Thanks for the time, Simon.
Pleasure. Great to talk with you.